Good evening, good evening, good evening. We're back, y'all. Y'all know me. My name is Brian Keith Anderson. My friends call me Keith. My family call me Keith. So that means you can call me Keith. Welcome to another episode of Beautiful Scars Inc., where our motto is come to us with open wounds and leave with beautiful scars. Man, it's a long week, but we made it. It's Friday, you guys, and I'm blessed and highly favored and thankful to being here with you this evening. Thank you all for tuning in. Listen, this is going to be another rough one today, but we're going to make it through. There's no script to this. I'm just going to speak straight from my heart. Curtis Graham. Wow. What can I say about him? For those of you that have ever read my book, you know the importance that he played in my life. So I'm just going to start from the beginning because I got three separate stories real quick. We're not going to be long because I want to get off of here before I, start, my allergies start messing up and I start, water in my eyes. So we're not going to do that, but we're going to make it through by God's grace. Curtis Graham. Man, I met this man when it was one of the worst times of my life. I was a stone cold drug addict, functioning drug addict. I would work. I was suffering from a mental disorder and I did not know it. I just knew that I was in bad shape mentally. I was ruining the relationships with my family. And by the way, y'all know who that is up there. My right-hand man, Pastor Herbert Lee Anderson. Back to the story. One of the worst times in my life, I was at my lowest point, and I worked at this place called Old Berry Center in Goldsboro, North Carolina. Curtis Graham worked there. One day, out of the blue, Curtis came up to me and said, "Listen, man, I know what you're going through." And I looked at Curtis, this is before we were friends. I said, "Man, you don't know me. What do you know what I'm going through? You don't even know me, Kurt. We were cordial with each other, but we didn't know each other like that." Curtis pulled me further away from the staff and the clients that were there. And Curtis began to tell me his recovery story. And I stood there and I listened to this man who everybody loved. I mean, Curtis would come to work and talk about how he rode his horses on the weekend and how him and his family are doing well. And so no, I would have never expected to hear this journey of recovery that Curtis had to go through for the first time in my life. Man, hope sprung eternal inside of me. I'd never heard or seen someone that had made it through. I've heard about it. I've read about it. But here, standing before me, was this man telling me that there is a way to make it through. How he knew that I was struggling. I guess there's a look. I guess there's an attitude. I guess there's a vibe that a person gets that has been through what you are currently going through. So that day, hope sprung eternal in my soul. I got the message that maybe it's possible for me to get through. Maybe it is possible for me to survive. Maybe it's possible for me to thrive. And as a result of me meeting that man, Curtis Graham, on that day, and Curtis talking to me, and he took an interest in me, and he started to mentor me, and he started to teach me how he made it through, and he started to spend time with me, and he started to invite me to his church, and he started to introduce me to other people who have made it through the storms of life. Change was able to come in my life. That was way back in 1994. I ended up in treatment in 1995, and my life has changed ever since, just by sharing a story, just by sharing his story, the power that's inside of a person's story. Just by sharing his story, my life changed. Fast forward to this past Wednesday. I was teaching a class online, a Zoom class, and some of the people there had read my book, and they heard about this man named Curtis Graham. And throughout the years, I've always kept in touch with Curtis Graham, and about 2.5 months ago, I called him for the last time, and we laughed and we joked, and we had a great time on the phone, and we spent, I believe, the longest time we have ever spent on the phone that time on the call, and it was good to tell him that I loved him. At the end of the call, I always do that. Sometimes men have a hard time telling each other that, but I make sure and do that, especially for those that I love. Got off the call and all was well. This past Wednesday, the class was interested in my story and how I made it through and how I made it over. And I told them about this intricate part of my life and this man named Curtis Graham. And some of them raised their hands and said, yes, I read about him in your book. So something came to my mind. Let's call Curtis live here on air while I'm teaching this course and these classes. And they see my face and I see their faces. Let's talk to the man that was so big of a part helping me make it through. I dialed his number, excited, like a little kid on Christmas Day, waiting for him to answer the phone. And the class was anticipating hearing this story of that same day and how his perspective was on that day. And his wife answers the phone. And I said, Miss Graham, this is Brian Anderson. You know me. I'm the young man that I write about your husband in my books. I've often called here. How you doing today? She said, well, to be expected. I said, I'm just calling if we can speak to Curtis. I got my class on the line, and I wanted to introduce him to them. And this is what his wife told me. She said, well, I'm sorry to tell you, Brian, but Curtis passed away last month on the 11th. So here I am, a class full of people, and hearing for the first time that my mentor, the man that literally saved my life from mental illness and drug addiction, is gone. Man, it hit me. It took my breath away. It took the wind out of me. And so I had to pull it together because once again, I got a live Zoom class on the air and they're listening and I'm looking at them and their mouths are wide open. They're like in shock and I've got to pull it together. I've got to make it through this moment in time. So I tell Curtis's wife, listen, please forgive me. I didn't know. She says, yes, I know you didn't know. I didn't have your number. I didn't have your address to tell you. And so she told me she was sorry that I had to find out that way. And I bowed my head for a minute. I said, man, please, my condolences to you and the family. I said, I told her Curtis was the one. He was the one. His story, just by sharing his story with me, my life changed. She says, I know. I read your books. I got off the air with her that day. I had to take a break from my class. I sent them on a 15-minute break, and I had to compose myself because this was only around 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I had to make it to 4:30 with the whole class, and I was able to get through, and I was able to let them know that stuff like this happens in real life, and I had to plow through the rest of that class with them because they were my responsibility. And the beauty of that moment was that they got to see everything that I was talking about earlier that week. Listen, you got to make it through the storms of life. Life will blindside you. Life will hit you upside your head, and you can't let it cripple you. You got to make it through. And here we are in real life. I got to make it through. Life will cripple me. Life will blindside me, but I got to make it through. So I'm grateful to God that I was able to make it through that moment. I tell you all that story about Curtis Graham, the man that changed my life. Yeah, my father prayed for me, but my father never suffered from mental illness or addictive disease. My father had his preacher buddies pray for me, and there was a time that I was baptized, and there was a time that I was anointed with the oil, and there was a time that they continued to pray for me. And I believe my father's prayers kept me alive, but it wasn't until I met that man, Curtis Graham, my life changed. My life changed. I want to tell you another story, and I'm going to end with this. We're talking about the power, the magic that is within your story, the magic that is within your testimony. I was facilitating another group about maybe 3 months ago, and I tell my story, and I tell it in third-person format so that the audience does not know it's me that I'm talking about. And I share all the darkness, all the pain, all the misery that I've ever been through in my life, the molestation, the homelessness, the dyslexia, the 3 times jail, the 2 suicide attempts, the lockdown inpatient treatment for 28 days. I tell it all in graphic detail. I share this story, but no one knows it's me until the end of the story. And then I, tell the audience that I'm speaking to, yeah, it's me. That story is all about me. I am recovery. And as I finished up my story, this young lady in the back of the class, she raised her hand. She said this. She said, Mr. Anderson, she says, I've got to tell you this. my family, we don't believe in God. We've never believed in this entity that you speak about all through your story. Matter of fact, from where I come from, this other country, my whole family, my father, my grandparents, my grandparents' parents, we've never believed in a God. We've always thought that if there was a God, he would have never let us live in this deplorable conditions in our lives. So we have never, and our whole generations have never believed in God. And then she said this. She said, but that entity that you talk about, whatever that is, I don't even know how to describe it, but whatever it is, can you show me, can you tell me how to get some of that? Wait a minute. This atheist sitting in this class hearing my story. After she heard the story and found out it was me, all she wanted to know is how can she get some of that, whatever that is. She wanted to know the God that I spoke about in my story, the power, the magic in our testimony, in our stories. What a mighty God we serve. I tell you all that to say this. Our stories are for God's glory. Our stories is not to keep to ourselves. Our stories is to make sure that we give back. We tell someone else how good God is. Yeah, we read about the stories in the Bible all day, and we shout and jump and scream about David and the lion and the Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and that was getting ready, that was thrown in the fire, and we shout and we jump and we scream and we praise God. But we need to be doing the same thing about what God has done for us in our lives. So, once again, an atheist wanted to know about this thing called God that I talked about just by sharing my story. Curtis Graham is gone. My man 50 grand is gone. And the way I found out about it kind of blew me away, but I thank God for sending him in my direction, because as a result of that, years later, this atheist wanted to know about the God that I serve. Now, I'm going to get off the air real quick, but I just wanted you all to know about my man, Curtis Graham, who I am forever grateful to, the God sending him in my direction that day, and him telling me that he knew what I was going through. So I know he's not here to hear it, but I just want to thank his family and his children and his wife and everybody that made him who he was. Because as a result of that, God used him to bless me, and I'm forever grateful for that. Listen, the answer that I gave that woman who she wanted to know how can she get some of that, I told her, I don't need you to go find a preacher. I don't need you to go find a church. I don't need you to go find a rabbi. I don't need you to do any of that. No books on religion. I don't need you to do any of that. This is what I told her. I said, just go love somebody. Start with love. Yeah, that's the ticket. Just love. There you go. Love somebody. That's the ticket. Because when you find love, you'll find God. God is all in love. God is love. You'll find love. One love, y'all. One love.